Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
And today we are talking about 10 things literary agents look for in a book.
Yeah, so these are the things that will clinch an offer of representation.
In my opinion, these are 10 great things. So this is a good list made by us. So let's start with probably the most obvious. And I do want to also preface by what we mean by this, because I think now it's even more so, it's becoming a term that is sort of, we shouldn't really use. But voice. I think that by voice, what I mean, I think what you mean is like the tone, the way it applies to the genre, the actual like narrative.
I think that's what most people in publishing mean.
Yeah.
And I think we'll still talk to editors who will say, I didn't connect with the voice. And while I think we're all trying to change what we say to that, what we tend to mean by that is really the style of writing.
Right.
And oftentimes the narrator. So whether it's third person or first person, that voice and the style of writing and the rhythm and the cadence of the writing is what we mean by voice.
Right. Yeah. So that is the number one thing to get anyone to read any book, right? Let alone a literary agent reading a submission. Just something that kind of just hooks us in and keeps us there. That sort of narrative voice that propels us forward. So that is our first, within the first pages, those are things that we're looking for.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sometimes even in the query letter, sometimes that can, though, sometimes there are times when I read a query letter and the idea itself, I may be a little on the fence about, but the way it's written, the author's style of writing just grabs me so much that I just want to read more of that no matter what it is. Right. You know, and I think we see that sometimes with books. When you read a book, you know, when you finish a book and you hold it and you can't put it down, I always feel like that has more to do with the author than it does the plot or the characters, that you just want, that author could write a grocery list and you want to read it.
That's my favorite phrase. I would read her grocery list.
Right. But I think that's so true. And I think that to us is what we think of when we think of voice, that grocery list writer that we just want to read everything of.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But this is sort of similar, but it's very different, I think, in how we mean it. But the writing is our next qualification. Yeah. But I think what we mean by this writing is the actual technical writing. Things, making sure it's clean, it's done well. It's not something that we're going to be line editing or anything like that, like the actual technical writing style.
Yeah, so to me, I think the best example of that, and what most often, well, I guess there's a lot of different examples, but, you know, dialogue, for example.
Right.
If your dialogue feels unnatural or choppy, or, you know, hi, how are you, said the girl. I am fine, said the boy. That's the writing to me. Or description, you know. And for me, a lot of times it's over description. It's that everything you mentioned, like, you know, the boy's shirt was a cerulean blue with little tiny pearl buttons. And when he looked at the girl, all he could see was the bright pink sunshine of her sweat. It's like, oh my God, enough. Just tell me the story. So, and that's bad writing because I'm a bad writer. But those would be two sort of examples of what we mean by writing.
Right. Yes, exactly. And showing, not telling, not showing.
Correct.
That's really the biggest one for me. When I feel like I'm being spoken to instead of really feeling immersed in the story, I think that's what this writing, what we mean by that.
Yes.
Words are difficult for me right now.
Your writing is terrible today.
Right, my writing is terrible. I would be rejected immediately. Plot is our third point. Having a plot that is interesting, that moves quickly enough to keep me interested, that is different enough. This obviously is a huge umbrella that a lot of things fall under, but is the plot something that we loved, that we were interested in, that we think we could work with? That is also one of the biggest points of a book, obviously.
And I think no matter what you write, a plot has to have twists and turns.
Yes.
And I don't just mean in the sense of domestic suspense where there's a big twist, but in any book, a plot has to be multi-layered, just like life is. You know, if I'm
Look at
writing a
that.
book, look at that.
Oh, today.
But if I'm writing a book on divorce, let's say, the plot is so much more than the process of the divorce. It's
Right.
also the getting divorced, and then, you get in a car accident with a really attractive
Wow.
person that you never, but all of a sudden there's a plot twist.
There has to be nuance.
Correct. So plot really, to me, has to take me on many different journeys.
And I mean, there are plenty of books that like sort of glide to an ending that you perfectly expected, but there's an emotional arc, right?
Yeah.
Like there's maybe the plot isn't necessarily physical or twisty and turny, but there is that emotional plot. I think that you have to have both or one of those to really, well, I think you'd always need an emotional arc, but you have to have something that, while I may have expected it, feels satisfying.
Yeah, and I want to use cozy mysteries, for example.
Oh,
so give
perfect.
me 1 second.
Yes. I will put the little Jeopardy theme music here.
You gotta clap.
Do you think I have to pay them royalties if I use that music?
I probably.
Okay, I won't put that. I can just sing it.
Okay, so one of our more recent is actually one of yours.
Oh, Cheryl.
So a cozy mystery, for the most part, is a simple mystery. We have a body. We only have one.
Yes.
And the story solves that.
Just one body.
Just one body, not 12. And there's no blood, guts, those kinds of things. And the reason I want to use a cozy mystery is because it's often thought of as a simpler mystery. But the truth is, it still has plot twists. There's often a relationship that the protagonist is also, sometimes it's a love triangle that the protagonist is negotiating that might take its course over multiple books. It's friendships. It's starting a business is often a plot line in cozy mysteries, where in addition to navigating a potential relationship and solving the mystery of the dead body in the store, the protagonist is also trying to get their business off the ground. So all of these things are different plot things that are happening that because cozies tend to be a series, they may not all be solved at the end of one book, although the murder always is.
Right.
But I think even a simple, I hate to say cozies are simple, but a book that's thought of as simpler has a lot of different plot points.
Right. And that kind of is a good example, because if you're a mystery reader and you know mysteries, you know the way they work, you can almost always guess the murderer, right?
Right.
But is it done in a way that feels satisfying by the end of that book? Even if I saw everything coming, was it satisfying? Like, is it a book that's built on the twist and then that twist falls flat? Right. That's obviously a concern. Or is it a book like a cozy where we go into it sort of expecting that warmth and knowing what's going to happen, but it feels satisfying by the end. It feels rewarding. Like I didn't feel like I just bought this book and I didn't like it.
And I also didn't feel like it was exactly as I suspected.
Right.
That sure, I may have figured out who the murderer was, but there were different paths that it took that I didn't expect.
And that goes to the emotional arcs of things like the love triangle, and who does she get with, and who are her friends, and how does the business go, things like that. Yep. So there's a lot that goes into plot, and it's definitely a tall order to serve up on our part, but those are just some of our musings on what makes a good one.
Well, and I think something to note is that we read a lot of plots. I mean, we read a lot for work. We read a lot in, our leisure time. I wanted to say leisure. I don't know why. And obviously we read a lot of submissions and queries. So we are also looking for a plot that takes us on an unexpected journey, because we know what to expect in so much of it.
Well, I say this all the time, and it sounds so pretentious, and I'm going to fully recognize that, but like, our job is story. We know story.
Right.
We watch it in TV, we watch it in movies, we read it in books, in work and leisure. So we can pretty much piece together any type of story.
Yeah, and we analyze it all the time.
Right.
I mean, how many
when we're reading.
How many books have you read where you think, like, if I were the editor, if I were the agent, if I had done this, and not even books, TV shows. I mean, pretty much any story we engage with, we think about what it could be or what we would do, or how did the author do this, or how did it develop? I mean, we always are thinking of that.
Right. And I don't think that we're using that against you in terms of like holding you up to like this super high standard, but there is that level of, okay, like we know this, how does this measure up?
But readers are too.
Yeah.
I mean, a cozy mystery reader does not want a book that has nothing but mystery from beginning to end. They're going to expect a lot more because they read a lot of books.
Right. Well, my best example is right after Gone Girl hit and all of those books started to come out, right?
Yes.
We had one of the biggest twists in Gone Girl, and we just started measuring everything up to that, or at least I did. I shouldn't say.
Right.
But when you start to read a lot in a genre or a type of book, you have a standard of what you're looking for and how you want to be rewarded by the end of a book. And I think literary agents do that for everything that they're reading.
But we have to, because readers are.
Exactly. And we have to be able to sell into that marketplace where readers are doing that actively every single day with every book they read.
Yep.
So, okay, that felt real profound by the end of it.
It was. We really dug into plot.
We did. I don't think we'll have much to say about the next one. This one's pretty obvious, but characters. I think the thing to remember in characters is that we don't necessarily have to like them, but we have to understand and maybe even empathize with them.
Yeah, I think that's key right there. So if a character is really sort of unlikable, there has to be something about them that makes us think there's potential.
Right.
So.
Our fifth point is setting. And I think this one can get tricky. So I don't think that we're all looking for this groundbreaking setting. Of course, I would love one. But does the setting feel full and realized? And I think that's important for any story in general. Understanding the world building, understanding where things are taking place, how that relates to your plot. Making sure it feels full, I think, is the hardest thing about it, but also what we're looking for in every...
Well, in a lot of ways, the setting almost becomes its own character in a book in a good way, you know? And I think Cozy Mysteries, back because they're still sitting next to me, are a good example of that, because, I mean, realistically, a murder every few months in the same small town is going to raise a lot of eyebrows. It doesn't in a cozy mystery.
Right.
And you become very attached to the setting. It becomes a town you want to go to and live in, and you love all the different personalities and people and the shops, and you feel like, you know, it's almost like a place where you vacation. You go back every book and, you know, revisit places that you love. And that is what makes a good setting.
And I think, just to shout her out, I think Ellery Adams does that so well with Storyton. I think the book Retreat, it's done so well.
I love Storyton. The first time I read Storyton, I was just like, oh, I want to live here.
Yeah, so that was just a shameless plug, but also, like, if you do read cozies or you have any interest in them, it's a great place to start in terms of seeing that setting. Mm-hmm. And I also have to shout her out, even though she's not a BookEnds client, but The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna.
Oh yeah, I was totally thinking of that one.
The setting is a character. It plays such an integral part into the book, and I think it's done so well and so lusciously that I mean, it's just the best example I can.
And even multiple settings within that book, like the town,
versus
the
bush,
versus like, and the different like almost homes within like the home settings in the areas. Like you walk into a home or the town or wherever, and you can feel everything about it. Yeah, I agree. I was totally thinking of that one.
Okay, so I think this is where our video sort of goes to the second half of things, which is more the business side of what it is.
So this usually happens once, I mean, it doesn't go in stages, but once we connect with all of these other things, then these next steps are sort of what we are mentally going towards.
This is always sort of like about halfway through. We're like, is this as good as I think it is?
Totally. I love this. Oh my God, please hold up. I love this.
Please hold up. Please hold up. So the first one is marketability.
Well, it really comes down to, is there a market for this book? And we don't just mean with readers, but it's also with publishers, because from our position at this point, the two go hand in hand. So, you know, is this another Gone Girl? So since Gone Girl, there has been a glut of husband-wife domestic suspense books.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago, I could have grabbed those up and people just wanted more.
Yes.
Now I actually get, we don't want any more husband and wife domestic suspense books. There is just not the market for that at this point. So if you're sending me domestic suspense, I would prefer sisters or best friends or siblings, maybe a parent-child, but anything other than a husband and wife at this point. So that's an example of marketability. Is there a market for this book? And sometimes on its surface, there isn't, you know, and horror is a good example of that. For years, I mean, I would even say a decade or more, horror has been practically nothing. People just weren't interested. It was Dean Koontz, it was Stephen King, and after that, you couldn't really sell horror. And then domestic suspense hit. And a side effect of domestic suspense became horror. These books that took domestic suspense to the next level. I would compare Alex North's
oh, perfect. Yeah.
Whisperman.
Whisperman, yep.
Was one of our favorites of last year. And to me, that was a book that was marketed as suspense, but really sort of balanced the line of horror. Baby Teeth is another example.
And something to remember too is that books are very, like the marketplace for books is also heavily influenced by the world and pop culture and what's going on outside. And horror really hit big in movies and television. I mean, The Haunting of Hill House, Stranger Things, all the Stephen King remakes that anyone could possibly think of that have been made. And that did travel over into books, I think. It's just something that people started to love again and really embrace. And it became evident in books. And
but also in a different way, in a slightly different way, because what they allowed us to do, these books, was market to an audience we already knew was buying without letting them know that we were sort of shifting them into a different area.
Yeah. Well, and I did also want to say, because we have marketability and marketplace on our list, so I think it's good to sort of link them together. The way the marketplace does shift and how marketability kind of works with that.
Yeah.
It's a little confusing, but the marketplace is what we can sell into and what we're actively looking for. And then marketability is whether this book works in that marketplace.
Right. So it's sort of like, is there an audience for this? Are editors looking for this? And there are plenty of times we will try to convince an editor they're looking for this, but we need to believe in the book and really believe it has that something special that we can do that with.
Yeah, so I just wanted to link those together because I think we touched on both of them, and instead of coming back and having the same conversation over again.
Good plan.
Okay, so our next point is the hook. Every writer is going to hate this section of the video. I hate this section of the video, so I'm just going to let Jessica talk about it. But yeah, the hook is there a hook?
Yeah, which is how we sell the book.
Yes.
So the best example I used was something that was said to me years ago by an editor. Who ended up passing on a manuscript I had pitched. The editor loved a lot about it, the writing, all of these other things, but actually said we couldn't envision what kind of cover we would put on this book. And that is sort of in a nutshell what your hook is. What one or two things are you going to grab the reader with that's going to make them pick up the book and turn it around and read the back cover copy? And that sort of comes down to, in other videos we discuss personal interests and MSWL. You know, can I put, a blueberry pie on the book? Is that something like pies sell books? Don't ask me why. People love pie. Pies sell books. Things like that can be the hook. But you are writing what you're writing in a genre. You're writing mystery. You're writing romance. You're writing suspense. So what about your book takes it out of this is another Gone Girl to a level that makes people look past all the husband and wives domestic suspense and go, now this one grabs my attention. And that's what the hook is. It's sort of, and think about it from your own point of view when you go to the bookstore. If you're a domestic suspense reader and you've read Gone Girl and you've read all these other books, at this point you want something a little different. So you're looking for something with a different hook.
Right. If you're going to tell your friends you have to read this book, well, what's it about? What is that 1 to 2 sentence description you're using to get them to say, yes, can I borrow your copy? Like,
like a chef who poisons the soup.
Yeah. Wow.
Or something. I don't know. You know, I always go back to the food.
Always, yeah.
It's getting close to lunchtime. Not really, but I'm hungry anyway.
No, it's close to our lunchtime. We have a brunch time that we just eat lunch food for.
Well, because, you know, we had breakfast like a half an hour ago, so therefore it's close to lunch.
That's it. Okay, so our next one is potential submissions. This is where we really put our agent hat on and we start mentally making a list, or maybe even physically making a list of, okay, which one of my editor colleagues at so-and-so house is going to get this? Who would love this? Who can I send this to? Can I craft a sustainable and the word I'm looking for is not coming to me, but like a big enough submission list that I can give this a proper submission life.
Right. And I mean, I know that I do, and I think you do too. By the time I go to offer representation, I have a list.
Yeah.
It's not thoroughly researched. So every submission list I make for every author, I re-research everything as if I have never met any of these editors again.
Yeah.
Because
my
when
first draft is done, though, the whole thing.
The whole thing. I have a first draft. I know the editors. I know the houses. There are some people with stars on them because I know I'm not going to come across anybody else who's as perfect for this book. I have a list. And yeah, if I'm looking at it and I can't come up with a list, there's a couple thoughts. One, I just might not be the right agent for it.
Right.
But the second thing is that, and it doesn't mean I can't do the research and find that list, but that might be part of my thought process. Like, do I want to do that?
Right.
Do I feel the passion enough? And can I do the best by this book?
Right. I sort of treat that as an indicator of how much I love the book. Like, if it's just coming to me and I can't stop putting the agent hat on, then there's a draw to me in that book.
Yeah, well, and it's sometimes not just how much you love, but how much you're right for it.
Yeah.
Like if that list is flowing out of me, then I think I am the right agent for this book because I already know exactly that editor. I just got off the call with editor so-and-so at such and such, and I know that this is perfect for them.
Well, it proves to us that we have the vision.
Yep. Yep, so. Exactly.
Now, the most important thing, I think, apart from all of the technicalities of the writing and the agenting side of things, is our enthusiasm for it.
Which I think came through in the video.
Yeah. But at the end of it, I think we all have this list of questions that we ask ourselves. But the most important one is, do I love it enough to add it to my workload, to represent this author, to give this author everything that I can give to an author? Like, do I have that sort of enthusiasm for this project? And that's like the make it or break it line, I think.
Which comes through in so many ways. It's often, I can't stop talking about it. It usually shows up on Slack. Oh my goodness, I just got blah, blah, blah. And people are like, how is it? And it always goes, I'm only 8 pages in.
Yeah,
because we are that enthusiastic.
Exactly. Well, my favorite story is an agent at BookEnds who got the pitch and had it made up in her mind that she was offering before she even read it. And then she read it and she was like, oh my God, no, I'm actually offering. And that was within like a day or two.
I think I know which one you're talking about. I think it was hours. I think she got the pitch. It took an hour for the author to submit the proposal, and an hour later there was an offer.
She read the whole thing, yeah. And I think that is something we can't ignore, and that's something that we're all. I think every time I open up my query manager, I'm looking for that feeling.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, so, absolutely.
That is our like final.
And we realize that some of it are things you can control, learn, plot, characters, the writing. Those are all things that you can learn as the writer and strengthen in your own work. But then there are also things like our contacts and connections, and obviously our enthusiasm, and even the marketability that you don't have full control over. Exactly. But you can learn through some of your research and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's not necessarily a checklist.
No.
I think that not every book calls for every one of those writing things, and not every book sort of immediately inspires all of that other stuff in us.
I think that's a really good point. It's not necessarily a checklist.
Right. But there are, every book that we offer on has at least most of these.
Exactly.
So that's our little disclaimer. And like you said, a lot of this you can't control, so don't go beating yourself up over it. But
now I really want to go read my queries. I feel like there's something in there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for watching. We hope that this was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you've got anything to tell us about these categories in the comments, please do so. But we hope to see you soon, and take care.